Today it's difficult to know what gentleness looks like, especially in the rough and tumble competitive culture we live in. Is it even possible to be gentle in a survival of the fittest world? Gentleness is rare in this day and age of rage on TV and radio talk shows and politics. Our culture seems to have forgotten how to have civil and respectful discourse. It seems everyone is mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. And whereas kindness and goodness are virtues we bestow on others, gentleness is an inward way of being. And it ultimately manifests itself in the ways we interact with others. The word gentleness comes from the Hebrew, Greek, and Latin terms, all meaning humility or meekness. Today in our culture, we don't typically think of meekness as being a positive attribute of behavior. In fact, we usually disdain or avoid meekness, seeing it as a sign of weakness. Maybe it's easier for us to get our contemporary heads around the idea of humility or being humble. A good contemporary example is the character of Atticus Finch in the great American novel To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. He was strong and yet gentle, not allowing anyone to walk all over him, and like the ancient Greeks, he was able to balance his emotions. So let's put this in context, beginning with the ancient Greek culture and the early Christian church. Prowess, as a Greek virtue, implied a sense of balance by avoiding extremes. In other words, getting angry at the right time for the right reason, standing in the middle ground between anger and no anger. And to the Greeks, this was not a sign of weakness, but a virtue, reflecting one's strength through gentleness. And in the early Christian church, people met and gathered together for fellowship and worship, but over time they began to argue and bicker over how things should be. And so the Apostle Paul began writing letters to the early church. In Ephesians, he writes, "Be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love." This is good advice to us even today. Pastor Charles Swindoll says this about gentleness. In our rough and rugged individualism, we think of gentleness as weakness, being soft and virtually spineless. Not so. Gentleness includes such enviable qualities as having strength under control, being calm and peaceful when surrounded by a heated atmosphere, emitting a soothing effect on those who may be angry or otherwise beside themselves, and possessing tact and gracious courtesy that causes others to retain their self-esteem and dignity. Instead of losing, the gentle gain, and instead of being ripped off and taken advantage of, they come out ahead. We can be gentle in our personal lives and relationships, and that doesn't mean we can't get angry or frustrated. It means we use those emotions as a catalyst for calm, loving, and rational conversations to resolve an issue. Gentleness can occur in the workplace as well, being calm, respectful, and tactful in the most challenging circumstances. And remember, on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek and poor in spirit." And while Christ was lifting up the oppressed and those living in poverty, he was also implicitly honoring any person who is willing to set aside their meanness for the sake of others by putting them on an equal or higher plane.